Hi everyone, welcome to Pass AMC. My name is Amrit, and this channel is a fruit of my own journey into becoming an Australian medical doctor. Passing the AMC exams is 50% of the battle, and getting a job and starting work as a doctor is 50% of the battle. Today, I'm going to talk about the 50% of the battle, which is getting a job and entering the Australian medical workforce. I will divide this session in two phases. Let's start with phase one, which is applying to the jobs online. In order to do that, it's important to have a well-written professional resume. So your resume is a medium for advertising yourself. It's a means to present yourself as a job applicant and try to claim that you're the best choice candidate to a prospective employer. Let's talk about your resume. Did you know that on average, an employer or recruiter takes only 8 to 10 seconds to screen a resume and job application? So sometimes it can also be less than 8 to 10 seconds. In having said that, we can find different ways to improve ourselves, to increase our chances of getting a job, and that's what today's session is all about. People often spend a considerable amount of time focusing on what needs to be in the resume rather than how it's written. Both are equally important. The tone of voice and how a professional resume is written in terms of the style, font, layout, and language is the key in getting your job application shortlisted or not. I know for a fact that resumes are screened and scored accordingly. So why not hire a resume writing professional? A well-written resume will produce results. So for those who can afford a professional person, please do it. And for those who can't, then let's talk about that. So please always address the key selection criteria for the role that you're applying for. Don't waste someone's time. Try to be to the point. Read the job vacancy and its attached documents and edit your resume and cover letter accordingly. Make sure you match the key selection criteria always. Resumes should always be tweaked for every job application to ensure that the key selection criteria and the core skills required, plus the culture and the team fit, and whatever else they are looking for in the candidate is covered. This shows that you've done your research on the role, the responsibilities, and of course, the hospital itself. So please, my advice here, go through the application, go through the documents, have a look at what they've advertised, and make sure you edit your resume accordingly. The next thing is accuracy. Accuracy is paramount. Your resume needs to be factually accurate, including dates of employment, education completed, job titles, and skills possessed in each role, demonstrating your growth as a professional in each individual role. The writing in your resume should be concise, clearly expressed, and to the point. Grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes are one of the worst mistakes you can make. Please use proper grammar, spelling, punctuation in the tone of writing. The next thing is the color of the wordings. So this needs to be black and only black. Resumes do get disregarded when all sorts of color and style of font are used. So it really does look so unprofessional and is extremely unnecessary. Many people forget that this is not a wedding or party invitation that you're giving out. It's actually a resume. So stick to black. The next thing I would want to focus on is keeping it relevant to the position. So your resume and the style and the way it's organized should be relevant to the position that you're applying for. For example, you may need to make adjustments to your resume when you're applying for a position as an intern versus a position as a registrar. Also, keep only relevant information in the resume. For example, back in 2015, I worked on a project on a medical tourism industry between African countries and India. This project was something I did back in 2015, and it wasn't adding any value on my resume because it didn't show my recency of practice, nor does it help in demonstrating key skills that my potential employer is looking for. So, adding this will unnecessarily waste my recruiter's time and take space on my resume, which is unnecessary, right? So, it's not needed. I hope you can take out all the stuff that doesn't need to be there in your resume. Make sure you do have the skills they're looking for. Otherwise, it's a wasted application and time for both you and the employer. Let's talk about the next step, which is having a good cover letter. When you submit your resume for a suitable position, you will want to have a tailored cover letter to accompany it. Professionally presented cover letters may make the difference between getting a job interview and having your application ignored. So it makes sense to take the time to write a thoughtful and tailored professional cover letter for each individual job application. It's not a copy paste thing, guys. Please get that clear. A cover letter also shows the employer that you take the job opportunity seriously and you are prepared to take more initiatives to be considered for the job. It's also possible that the hiring manager will actually look at your cover letter when selecting applicants to interview. While your resume is meant to be a look back at your experience and where you've been, the cover letter should focus on the future and what you want to do. It can be helpful to think of it as the bridge between the past and the future that explains what you hope to do next and why. What happens all the time is that people use the cover letter to simply restate the resume. I hope you've understood that these two things are separate. So let's see how we can improve our cover letter. So I would recommend start with a punchline, like an opening line, like why this HMO or RMO job is exciting to you, what brings you here, or what you bring to the table. Everything you write should relate to the job description. So have a look at the application, what are they looking for, and make sure everything you write is in relation to that job description. Every line of your cover letter should be in relation to the actual description. Ask yourself, how does this sentence relate to the job description? If you find yourself going on tangents or including facts that don't prove your ability to excel at the job or understand the hospital culture or whatever it is that you're writing in there and it's not making sense, please take it out. Hiring managers or recruiters are reading a bunch of these. So you want to catch their attention. That's the key. Once upon a time, I was working in a rural hospital and became friends with one of the HR staff. And I was amazed to find out that on average, around 60 doctors were sending in their applications to such a small rural hospital. So you can imagine like the headache of reading about 60 applications every day and choosing between them. In the metropolitan areas, the number of applicants would be so much more. So if you're looking to work in the metropolitan areas, you need to up your game. Hiring managers in general are looking for people who can help them solve problems. They want the particular job to be filled. So my advice is simplify things in such a way that you are making it easy for them to hire you. It's like spoon feeding someone. Make it so simple that they can see how you match with the job, right? So for cover letters, my tips are it should be brief enough that someone can read it at a glance. Get your friend, former colleague, or mentor to review it as they can give some helpful advice, or they might catch some grammatical errors. Don't be afraid to get feedback. It's a great idea to share your cover letter with a few people, see what they say. The tip here is edit, edit, and edit. Read it out aloud several times and edit, 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 and edit. Please do not try to be funny in your cover letter. Send a generic cover letter, customize each one for the specific job. Let's say you're applying to 10 different jobs, make sure each one is different, okay? Address it to the hospital with its address that you're applying for in the top, and you can address it to the manager of the medical workforce. Please never write to whom it may concern in your cover letter. That's just wrong. You can always find out who it is that you're sending the application to. You can specifically put in their name, or you can always put the manager of medical workforce. Do not go overboard with flattering in your letter. Be professional and mature. Keep it short, like really short, to the point. I've seen a bunch of cover letters in the past while helping people for job interviews, and the biggest issue is that people make their cover letter way too long. So, the general rule to follow is your cover letter should only be a single page long. Yes, you've heard me right, one page only. Make sure you don't vomit everything on that one page in a gigantic paragraph. Please break up your paragraphs, break up your cover letter into smaller paragraphs of like 3 to 4 sentences each. You could add some bullet points. It's so much more aesthetically pleasing, and the person reading your cover letter would feel good to see you organized, right? Please feel free to go online and see some of the samples, some of the cover letters that are specifically for doctors. There is an ocean of free information that's available. Please have a look at it and enlighten yourself. Alrighty, coming into phase 2. Let's say you've landed yourself in a job interview. Wow, well done. While you're one step closer to a chance at a new job, a job interview can also be very nerve-wracking. The aim is to come prepared so you're confident with every question that's thrown at you. To make things simple, I will divide this phase 2 in 3 parts. So let's start with part 1, which is the preparation before the interview. So over here, number 1, an important part of interview preparation is to take the time to analyze the job. So have a look at the job itself. As you review the job description, consider what are the key criteria here? What is the hospital looking for in a candidate? So don't just blindly apply to jobs, right? Go through the actual application, see what it is that they're looking for, download the documents. So this will help you to prepare. Number 2, make a list of the skills, knowledge, and professional and personal qualities that are required by the employer. So these are critical for your success in the job. Otherwise, you're just walking in the dark and wasting your and someone else's time. So please, once again, go through what's out there on that vacancy and read it nicely. Third, research the hospital. Before you attend a job interview, it's important to find out as much as you can, not only about the job, but also about the hospital. So research is a critical part of interview preparation. It will help you to prepare to answer interview questions about the organization, and it also helps you to ask the interviewer questions about their organization. You will also be able to find out whether the hospital and its culture is a good fit for you. To do research, there are a few things you can do. You can check the hospital's website. You can Google the news about the hospital, and specifically look at the About Us page on their website. You can get a good sense of the organization. And also you can compare the hospital with other hospitals. Public hospitals have annual reports which they publish, and what you can do is download it directly from their website, read through it. You will find major key information which is needed to prepare. It's so important to know about the organization where you have applied for a job. So for that reason, I strongly advise you to download the annual report from the website of the hospital. It will give you a good idea on their research, on their innovation, on the projects that they're expanding into, what sort of infrastructure they've got in place. It will also tell you about the financial status of the hospital, the summary of it, and in a bigger picture, like you can understand the values of the hospital and the key statistics of what they have done over the whole year. And when you're actually having your interview, knowing these things, knowing the strategies they have in place, knowing the programs they're doing, that will give you an edge above the others. Okay? So that's one major tip that I strongly advise you to do. Okay, so please do find out about the hospital, do your research, and be prepared. The next thing that I would also advise you to do is tap into your network. See if you know someone who can help give you an interview edge over the other candidates. Maybe it's a friend who knows somebody and they further know someone who works at that organization. Communicate with your friends, see what's happening, see if they know somebody, and hopefully get you some inside information. Alrighty, so plan on how you're going to introduce yourself when you're at the interview. A key part of getting ready for your interview is preparing how you will introduce yourself and how you will talk. So you should have a structure as to how you're going to introduce yourself. My understanding is that people connect with stories. So I would say work on your story. For example, first introduce yourself, explain your relevant education and professional background. Next, discuss the key skills and expertise you have, which sort of directly relates to this job. Finally, describe what you're looking for in this role and why this role at this particular organization is so important. So please practice introducing yourself. This is vital. It's not going to come overnight. You need to work on this. It has to come after a lot of practice. The next thing you want to do is prepare your answers to some of the common interview questions. For example, what makes you a Monash doctor or an Eastern Health doctor or an Alfred doctor? Like, they'll ask you these sort of questions like, why should we hire you? So over here, this is an opportunity to sell yourself. Think about what benefits you bring to the hospital. So if they take you compared to them taking someone else, what's the difference? So it's your opportunity to show them why you're better. So identify 3 skills or experiences you're going to mention. So prepare 3 important skills or experiences that you have. This list should include your hard skills mentioned. So for example, your technical abilities or your medical skills, as well as your transferable soft skills, like your communication skills or your ability to work as part of a team. You need to work on this. Like, you need to come up with your skills and experiences that you're going to mention if they ask you this question. They can also ask you about your strengths, your weaknesses. So over here, again, like, you need to take the time to prepare your response. How would your colleagues describe you? So things like that, right? You need to come up with an answer. Another question could be, why do you want this job? So to answer, you can talk about why you're passionate about the hospital, why you're passionate about the particular role, how this opportunity would allow you to progress. So, you need to formulate an answer. Then you've got the situational analysis questions, which are like, tell me about a time questions. These are sort of situational questions. To give you a few examples, tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time you did something exceptional. Tell me about a time recently when you helped someone. Tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with a colleague. There's a very long list of tell me about a time questions. You can find them on the internet. So these kind of questions usually help the interviewer to assess how you deal with setbacks. They help the interviewer understand whether you are aware of yourself, whether you know what you're doing, whether you take a step back and think about where you went wrong, or do you sweep it under the carpet and act like it never happened. Please plan which examples you're going to talk about, not something which is a fiction success story, but is a genuine example of where you made an oversight or error in judgment. Some key points to remember: explain clearly how it happened. Don't make excuses. Don't make like some random story up. Try not to blame others when you're talking about your story. Show that you've learned from the situation. Always talk about the outcome, always, and the summary or the learning for you in that event, or the change that the event brought for you. So you know how I'm all about structure, structure, structure. So please practice structure in these situations. Like I mentioned earlier, in a storytelling approach, like a movie, for example, like beginning with the introduction of the movie, in the middle there's drama, in the end you have the conclusion or the summary. The beginning and the ending have to make sense for the listener. So that's why I say that have structure when you're responding in these situational questions. A structured way of answering is ideal, so please keep that in mind. Another major tip I can give you is answering your questions or scenarios by using the STAR approach. So what is STAR? So S is situation, T is task, A is action, and R is result. Check it out online and practice it. When you're answering these questions, they are your life experiences and you are talking about them. So make sure you demonstrate leadership skills, team building skills, a very clear big picture approach, and also keep in mind, like, are you able to articulate the problem? Are you able to think on your feet? Are you able to follow through? So it's quite a lot to prepare, yeah? It doesn't come overnight. You need to put in the time and effort to prepare. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was new in Australia, I did not know anything about all of this that I'm talking about. I was just like in my own little bubble. Anyhow, I had applied to a few jobs and I was shortlisted for one. And here I was going for my first job interview. I was super excited. I was so happy that I got this opportunity to interview in person. The interview took place in 2 separate rooms. So in the first room, it was the medical side of things, which went great. The doctor who interviewed me asked like 4 to 5 medical questions and gave scenarios which I answered pretty good. He ended the interview by saying, "Oh, we'll see you on the floor." So that to me meant like, yay, I've nailed it. I was super excited, super happy. And then I had to go into the second room, which was like the second part of the interview with non-medical staff. So like the HR managers and things like that. They asked me first, question number 1, why do you want to work with this hospital? You won't believe me, but I had no logical answer on the spot. In my head, I was like, what do you mean why I want to work at this hospital? Like, I'm a doctor and I'm meant to work at a hospital. Like, what kind of a question is that? Well, all eyes were on me and I had to open my mouth and answer. All I could think of, honestly, was like how beautiful and clean the hospital was. While I took the taxi to reach the hospital, everything on the way was so green and lush. It was such a pleasant and green suburb. It looked very hilly and it reminded me of my home in Africa, in Uganda. So can you imagine? Like, she looked at me with open eyes and like she must be like wanting to laugh at me, and I felt like, wow, she really likes me. And then she went on and asked me the next question, which was, tell me about a time recently when you demonstrated care. Again, I was expecting like something different. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know what I was expecting. I was so not prepared for this. Like, I was not expecting these sort of questions, and I had not prepared. I had never had such an interview in my life. So I was like, yeah, so back to the question. So she's like, tell me about a time recently when you demonstrated care. So I was like, oh, it was a rainy day last week, and I was in my car driving when I saw this person walking in the rain. They were getting wet, so I pulled over and gave them my umbrella that I had in my car, and the end of the story. That's it. So you can imagine, like, how crap of an answer that was. We spoke about a few other things, and I was like, wow, this went well. And off I went to a cafe to celebrate, and I thought I got the job. Let's celebrate. I ordered myself like the biggest piece of carrot cake and a cappuccino, and I had it like with the biggest smile on my face. To make things better, I called my husband and I told him, wow, how fantastic. This was so easy. And I laughed on the phone, and you won't believe what happened next. Haha. So I got an email saying, I'll tell you like exactly what the email said. The standard of interviewed applicants was very high. On this occasion, you have not been successful as other applicants more closely matched our requirements. The end of the story. So you see how naive I was, like how a lack of preparation failed me here. Although the medical part of the interview went well, the HR one did not. So, if you want to make a good impression and give yourself the best chance of success, you must become familiar with the format and the types of questions that are likely to arise and understand how best to present yourself. Okay? So prepare these scenarios. By preparing the scenarios and examples before your interview, you're less likely to feel flustered when asked to provide an example. Ideally, your scenarios and examples should reflect your skill set and your achievements in a positive way. Be sure to keep them clear and to the point. Have a structure like the approach, the STAR approach, which I mentioned earlier. Make sure you have structure. So each hospital is looking for different things based on their values. For example, things like ethics, empathy, your thinking ability, your teamwork, your leadership skills, whether or not you have self awareness. If you're going into the regional settings, they're looking at the skills to do with indigenous health, the rural medicine, things like that, right? So whether or not you have a good understanding on the medical system and the program that the state has. So there are criterias that are used to assess in medical interviews. Again, like each hospital differs in making their criteria for their interviews. So common assessment criterias could be like your communication skills, conflict resolution skills, organization and management skills, critical thinking abilities, decision making abilities, your social responsibility, empathy, moral and ethical reasoning, your awareness on health issues like COVID-19, for example, at the moment. Your teamwork and leadership skills, and your quality of motivation in medicine as a profession. So they're not only looking at the medical side of questions, but also like overall how you perform. Okay. Some of the general questions they would ask is like, tell us more about yourself, tell us more about your family, why are you coming to Australia, what attracted you to this position, what can you bring to this hospital, what do you hope to achieve this year, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, what do you consider to be your most important practical skills, what do you want from this job, are you able to work under pressure? So be ready to give examples like a story. Do not do like yes or no. That's not enough. So always have a story. People connect with stories. Okay. Then you have your medical scenarios, which are like your management cases, like management of emergency cases, like chest pain, shortness of breath, cough, anaphylaxis, trauma, or it could be like your management of your ward-based patients. Like they'll give you a scenario and tell you like post-op day 2, shortness of breath, what are you going to do? So they'll give you like some sort of a scenario and expect you to demonstrate the key skills which I just mentioned, like communication, decision making, empathy, self awareness, whether you know when to call for help, whether you know your teamwork and leadership skills, and whether you're a safe doctor. So, in these medical scenarios, it's not just about diagnosis, but about how you perform as a medical practitioner. Okay. All right. So, in addition, like your plan should include how to make your best first impression possible, how to build rapport with your interviewer, and what to do if your mind goes blank. So, always have a backup, and that backup will only come if you prepare. If you're doing a phone or online like Zoom interview, there's a few things that I would like for you to keep in mind. So, first thing, research the people who are on the interview panel. You can ask them via email, like who's going to be there. Or you would know who's going to be there with the link that they're sending you. They usually inform you on who's the panel. Um, so, doing a bit of research on who is on your interview panel will help you. You can also like read about them, see what articles they've published, sort of things. Provide two phone numbers. So make sure, like, if you're doing a phone interview, you have a backup just in case some kind of problem happens when connecting. You have an alternative number. If you're doing a Zoom interview, make sure like you've prepared your interview space and technology. Decide before the interview where in your house you're going to be sitting. Make sure there's very little background noise and you've got a good phone or internet reception. If you're using like a headset that's Bluetooth connected, make sure it's connected before. And make sure you also have paper and pen to write down the notes or like points or questions to make sure like you're on top of your game. Manage your audience. Your first impression is very important, so you only get one chance to make your first impression. So how can we do that? The first thing is greet the callers in a very clear, in a very friendly manner. Make sure you remember their names. So, for example, when the call begins, they'll say, "Hello, good morning. My name is Jackie. I am the emergency consultant from blah blah hospital." So, quickly write down the name while they are introducing themselves. Okay. And then address them by their name again and again when they ask you questions. So, you can say, like, "Oh, thank you so much, Jackie, for the question. To answer this question, Jackie, this is what I think, da 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 da, and then thank you, Jackie." You see, like I've used her name like 3-4 times, so it looks very professional, and without physically seeing them, you're trying to connect to them, right? And at the end, like be prepared with at least 3 questions for the panel. Show them that you're very interested in your career growth and also in the organization itself. So, topics on what you can ask can be things like about the job itself or like general stuff. Examples can be, "Can you please tell me more about the department or the role? Why has this role become available? Has someone resigned or is there an expansion?" You could also ask, like, what is the maximum number of patients the department can cater to? How many HMOs or how many registrars does the department have? This kind of question, like, sort of helps you understand what your workload is going to be. What sort of equipment the hospital has, like MRI, CT, robotics, etc. Like, feel free to ask questions, but you will only do this if you know what you're gonna get into. Otherwise, like when the interview ends, they'll be like, "Oh, do you have any questions?" And if you don't have things written up, if you've not done research on the hospital, you will not be able to ask. You can also ask about like your career aspirations, like training options, career growth options, simple things like, is there a library? It can also be about the facilities they have for working parents. Don't be afraid to ask about how the hospital can help you achieve your long-term goals. Say you want to become an emergency trainee, ask them like, what's the process? What is the number of the registrars that go on to become trainees, or the number of registrars currently on the training program? So remember how I said your beginning and your ending have to be perfect? So this is what I'm talking about. How you ask questions, how you talk, um, and how confident you are in your approach, and how you're not afraid to ask questions. All of this will count. Alrighty, let's move on to part two. So, part two is about your day of the interview. So, on the day of the interview, what do you do? Well, the first thing is make sure you arrive on time. Being late is inexcusable, but arriving 20 minutes early can also make the interviewer feel rushed and start the meeting off with unnecessary tension. It's good to show up, say, between 5 to 10 minutes early. In cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and other bigger cities, traffic can be a problem. Getting to the location can be a problem due to the means of transport that you take, say tram or train, metro, whatever. So make sure you allow plenty of time to locate your destination and get through to find the actual office where you're going to have your interview. I personally would prepare to arrive 30 minutes before and then wait nearby at like a cafe or in the lobby of the hospital until 5 minutes before the scheduled time. So, some of the things in interviews are told and some are untold. What I'm getting at is dressing. In Australia, all people are considered equal, but certain things like how doctors should be dressed is an unsaid expectation. You're not expected to dress like James Bond in a three-piece suit, neither like as if you're going to a nightclub or opera. So keep in mind both underdressing and overdressing. Technically, no one should discriminate on looks, dressing, or religion. However, there are some expectations people have. So, how to make the best first impression? The answer is your dressing. Make sure you look your best. How you dress yourself changes who you are. It changes the value of what you have to say, at least to the person who's looking and listening. This point is a very important point as you only have seconds to make a great impression. So be aware of the hospital culture and the dress code. When in doubt, men should wear a suit, women should wear like their best professional attire. I tend to go with darker colors because if I accidentally spill something on my way there, then it doesn't look ugly. There are few things to keep in mind. Please observe hygiene. Things like your nails need to be clean, nicely manicured, ideally short. Avoid nail polish. Anything that screams for attention, don't do it. Hair should be nicely made up, tidy. For men, keep in mind the facial hair. Please look presentable. Makeup, so in a way that it appears presentable. Don't look like you're going to a wedding, but at the same time, don't look like it's a funeral. Keep in mind you're a doctor and keep it subtle, simple, and presentable for the people who are going to interview you. Shoes, nicely polished and shiny. They say that the first thing people notice about a person is their shoes. So, yeah, no bling bling shoes, please. Be professional as much as you can. Talking about your clothes, make sure they're nicely ironed or they're one of those wrinkle free ones, please. Your phone, like your mobile phone, make sure it's off and you don't want your phone to be buzzing in the middle of the interview. It's not professional. Yeah, so I would highly recommend switching the phone off. The next thing I want to talk about is smile and dental hygiene. I personally love people who smile. There's so much power in a face that's smiling. I think it's so, so important. But don't forget to brush your teeth and also check your teeth before the interview to make sure nothing is stuck in between. Make sure your breath is not stinky. Perhaps have a mint prior to entering the interview. The next thing is the body odor. Please keep in mind things like deodorant, perfume. Make sure you smell pleasant. Okay, so all this is like the basic stuff. The important one, very, very important, is to know your resume. The day that you actually go for your interview, you need to know your resume. So make sure you go over your cover letter and your resume over and over again. It's so important. They can randomly ask you questions on anything. Um, a funny personal example I can give you is one from an interview I had done long back. I remember having prepared like all the key things and all the must know scenarios. And when the time came for the interview, I was asked by the panel about my internship. Now, for me, I've done my internship 11 years ago. So I was like, intern what? Now imagine being asked stuff that happened 11 years ago. Like, seriously? So again, like this was a very weird question for me. And like they wanted to know the details of my internship. So please know your resume well. You should be able to explain every item in your resume in detail. Okay, so make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure you know the dates, the year, what all you've written. It should be genuine. um, I would say practice and have your professional story down to like 2 to 3 minute pitch. Be ready for likely questions. Also, be able to answer questions like how long did you work at that job and why did you move to Australia, things like that. Make sure you take a few seconds to think before you open your mouth. And also don't take forever. Like it's good to take a few seconds, but don't just sit there for like a minute not answering. And when you do start talking, make sure you have a structured approach. um, Please, please, please do not interrupt the panel when they're asking or saying something. If you do, like if you're one of those people who just have to say something quickly, then apologize. For example, like, oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, or I'm very sorry, but you were saying something, you know? So what I'm getting at is practicing interview etiquette. So during your interview, like make sure like you watch these little things. Watch your body language, things like shaking your leg, moving your hands, putting your hands in places where they don't belong. um, like if you're entering the room, make sure you shake your hands firmly. Well, with the current COVID situation, no one would want to shake your hand, but if they do, make sure it's a firm handshake. Eye contact is very important. So please make sure you try to eye contact as you articulate your points. Pay attention to questions they've asked you. Try not to jump to answer. Um, be attentive. Things like yawning, looking here and there. It's very unprofessional. Make sure you've had a good sleep the night before you go for the interview. It will avoid yawning at your interview. So look after yourself. At the interview, you want to be presentable, you want to look like you're interested. All right. I hope you will keep these points in mind. I hope and pray that you have a successful interview. Moving on to part three. So, after the interview. So, please enjoy yourself, have a treat. You've worked so hard and you've come so far. It takes a lot of courage to reach until here. So, well done. Every test in our life makes us bitter or better. Every problem comes to break us or make us. The choice is ours, whether we become a victim or victor. So keep in mind, we learn from failure, not success. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Um, if you make it and you get a job, awesome, fantastic, well done. Welcome to the other side. However, if you don't, then keep in mind you must make a decision that you're going to move on. It won't happen automatically. You will have to rise up and say, I don't care how hard this is. I don't care how disappointed I am. I'm not going to let this get the best of me. I am moving on with my life. Like, it's you who's going to make that decision, okay? Lance Armstrong, the professional road racing cyclist, nicely said, pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. That's a very big quote. I'll say it again. Pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. Once you start enjoying the growth pain brings and no longer fear failure, you are set. I truly mean it. Let's talk about one of my dear friends. So, I have a very dear friend called Rejection. Rejection and I became friends a long, long time ago. Rejection has taught me so many valuable lessons. The reason why I do pass AMC sessions to help you all is also due to my dear friend Rejection. I have grown as a person in becoming a better human being, learned valuable life lessons, and understood the power rejection has if we see it from the positive side of the lens. There's a saying, easy come, easy go. Let's say if you applied for a job and got called for an interview, and after the interview, you then did not get the job. Well, I'm not gonna lie, that's going to be painful. But what you do next is completely in your control. I remember going for an interview at a major hospital in Melbourne, and according to me, I felt I nailed it. This is not the other story, by the way, the one I told you with with the crazy like hills and greenery and lush, and making me feel like I'm in Uganda. No, this is not that story. Like I've had multiple failures, which I am proud of because they've taught me so much. So yeah, I remember like going to an interview at this major hospital in Melbourne, and I felt like I did so good in that interview, but at the end, I did not get accepted. It was difficult to get over the fact that I didn't make it. And I was sad, to be honest with you. I was sad for that one day when I found out I didn't make it. But my friends and family, they helped me to see the situation from a different side. It can be hard not to take a job rejection personally, but at some stage of the job search process, chances are you'll be turned down for a role. It's never a fun experience. But the key is to turn a negative into a positive and understand how to deal with job rejection to stay on top of your game. Please don't take it personally. The employer need to make a decision based on the candidate, and this is a candidate they believe is best suited for the role. I request you to learn from it by politely asking for feedback. You can do that via email, or like sometimes you can call them, but I recommend like asking for feedback in an email as opposed to the phone, so as you don't put the employer on the spot. Um, I remember like when I didn't get that job I really wanted, I was so upset because I really, really wanted that job. It was everything I could think and dream of. And you know how, like, it's so, so hard when you don't get what you want in life. Anyhow, so I politely wrote them an email expressing my gratitude in having the opportunity to be shortlisted for the interview, especially given it's such a great organization. I thanked them for their valuable time. I sincerely expressed my desire to join the organization and why this job was so important, and also like nicely explained that I respect and value the decision made by the panel. I explained in the email that I'm new to this country and I would highly appreciate any opportunity to improve myself. And it would mean the world if I can get some feedback to improve myself for the future. Um, so, what happened next was phenomenal. I got a 4-page feedback in email on how to improve myself. In that email, I also got to know things like that were good about me and also things that I did not do well. So the questions, the scenarios which I felt like, wow, I have answered them really well. In reality, I didn't do so good. So I got to know where I'm lacking. The moral of the story is a formula which I'm going to share with you. It is E times R equals to O. E is events, R is reaction, and O is outcome. So, the event of this rejection that happened to me was not in my control. That is E, okay? The way I react to this was entirely in my control, okay? That is the R. And the outcome that I got was based on my reaction. So that is the O. You can apply this formula in all areas of your life. E times R equals to O. Having a positive reaction, wanting to know why this happened, is there a lesson to be learned here? Being curious, being open and honest, this changed the whole outcome for me. And it can also do the same for you. Handling rejection is never easy, but it does offer valuable opportunities to discover more about yourself and enhance your job search techniques. Good things are always worth waiting for, and with persistence and a positive outlook, your dream job could be just around the corner. Please practice self awareness. Consider how you present yourself to others. Take this opportunity to go over your cover letter and your resume for all areas that could be improved. Stay positive. Sustain a positive mental attitude. It's so, so important. And things will happen. You will be rejected at some point in life. But the key here is maintaining a strong outlook. Make sure you treat yourself well. Do something that's bringing happiness to you. Go eat a cake or have a pizza. Go run or swim. Whatever it is that brings happiness to you, do it. Friends and family are such a blessing. Meet with them. Maintain a personal interest in things which fulfill your life outside of work, outside of study, like physical exercise or just a walk. It can be a great way to clear your head. And remember too that you're not alone. The reality is that the number of people turned down for jobs often outweighs those who receive an offer. Focus on the next opportunity. It could take you one step closer to being a doctor in Australia. The challenges will continue, and it's a never ending process because that's what life is all about. Hang in there, enjoy the process and the journey. Don't be afraid to keep trying, and don't be afraid of failure. You have come a long way. Don't let anything defeat you. In saying all of that, I hope this session was useful for you. I wish you all the very best in your journey into becoming an Australian medical doctor. Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to this session.